Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dick Gerback, and I'm a certified financial planner. I'm also the founder of Strategic Advisory Services, a financial planning and investment firm specializing in retirement income planning for retirees and those individuals who are considering retiring. I'm often asked, what exactly does our firm do that's different than other firms in this retirement space? And the answer is, we've created a process called Income Stages Money to Last that allows for our clients to address their biggest concern, which is running out of money. With this in mind, we are going to show you what this process is, how it works, and what it might mean not only to our clients, but maybe yourself if you're considering retiring. I'd like to introduce Jeremy Joyner, a certified financial planner and our senior advisor, and Michael Wellings, our director of communications and marketing. They will discuss this process, and at the end of approximately 20 minutes, I'll come back and summarize what they've talked about. Thanks for listening. We look forward to talking to you soon.
Well, thank you, Dick. My name is Jeremy Joyner. This is Michael Wellings, our communications director. We are going to go through our retirement income planning process today. But before we get going, we want to discuss and review our fiduciary standard. As you can see here, there's a lot that goes into what the fiduciary standard is. But most importantly, it's a pledge that we will always put our clients' interests ahead of our own. We have to maintain this standard as certified financial planners, but as a firm, that's not a necessary requirement. This is a requirement, an ethics standard we have for our firm. If you want to learn more about it, please give us a call. We'd love to go through this with you and why it makes sense to only do business with advisors that require themselves to be held as a fiduciary. Now we're going to go into our retirement income planning process, and we're going to start with the 5 big risks in retirement.
Right. Risk number 1 is an increased life expectancy risk. Put simply, nowadays folks live longer than they used to in the past.
Inflation risk is very important because the things you buy today are going to get more expensive in the future. Think about what it cost to purchase a car in 1985 versus what it costs today.
The third risk is a healthcare risk. Folks, medical technology is advancing at an unprecedented rate, and unfortunately, so too are the costs.
This is the big elephant in the room, market risk. The stock market is volatile. That's not news to anybody. But that volatility can help you in retirement. It's your behavior that matters the most. How you behave during these good and bad times can really affect the outcome. So we've tried to design a plan that helps our clients manage their behavior and understanding more and more about how stocks can really benefit somebody in the long term.
And the final risk is providing financial support for other family members. I don't know if you've seen Failure to Launch. It's a movie with Matthew McConaughey, but basically it's about a 40-year-old man who still lives with his parents who are retired. And if that's a real-life scenario for you, providing for either an unlaunched child or perhaps your parents or a spouse's parents, and if you're on fixed income, that is a significant burden on you, and it's something that needs to be accounted for.
So Michael and I have done lots of videos together, and so right about now, the statistics show somebody's starting to want to click off, or we're starting to lose attention. We haven't gotten to the good points here. We promise this may be some answers to some questions you don't even know you have. Stick with this. Give it a shot. It really might be a solution for you. The traditional approach to retirement income is what we call the 60-40 asset allocation. Michael, what is the 60-40?
So the 60-40 is where you ask a financial advisor, hey, how am I going to split up my assets? And the advisor says, well, we're going to take 60% of your assets, we're going to put them into stocks. And we're going to take the remaining 40% and put them into fixed income, which is bonds, cash equivalents.
We'd love to say that it's some academic well thought out approach to the 60-40, but really what it is when somebody's in retirement, a 100% stock portfolio certainly might feel too volatile, and a 0% stock portfolio might feel comfortable, but you can't do anything with a 0% stock portfolio because of inflationary problems. Or you've saved a fortune, one or the other. So what the industry kind of did is instead, well, if you can't be 100% stock, can't be zero, we'll stick it in the middle at this 60-40. And you can take out 4 to 4.5% of your portfolio out, increase that with inflation, and you should be fine. The problem is a portfolio such as a 60-40 or any portfolio for that matter will not generate the same return every single year. So in this example, the assumption is that this account or this portfolio will get 6 to 7%, and if you take out 4 to 4.5%, you'll be okay. But as Michael's going to go through here, there's some breakdowns with that.
Right. First off, can your portfolio handle inflation for the long term?
The 60/40 is really not getting what it might used to have gotten. So when this strategy was first designed back in the early to mid 90s, you could expect fairly high returns with the 60/40, 7-8% on average. Well, nowadays we're seeing that might not be possible. It might be something more like 5 to 7% on average, which really puts inflationary pressure.
The second is what happens if disaster strikes. So we as Houstonians know that things can happen at the drop of a hat. Hurricane Harvey came through and wrecked everybody's houses. If you're in fixed income and you have 5 feet of water in your house and you have to take out $60,000, $70,000 to repair things, can you handle that?
And disaster doesn't have to come in natural disaster. Disaster could be just the unplanned. What if something doesn't go according to the plan? What if you get cancer when you're 75? Or what if a parent of yours has a major medical issue and they have to move in with you, and that creates additional cost? The what ifs in life, you got to have a plan that can deal with them. And long-term care is a monster one. You can probably draw on many experiences yourself with the long-term care issue, or friends and family that have gone through it with their own family members. But in a way, you only have 2 options with long-term care costs. This is nursing home, home health, assisted living, those types of things. You can either use insurance to help fund that cost, which can be quite expensive and frankly not everybody qualifies for up front, or you need a plan that sort of approaches that itself. You self-fund the long-term care problem, and we certainly discuss this with clients.
And the final one is, could you afford to ride out a bear market? So we were speaking that the 60/40 banks on you being able to get 6-7% every year. Well, the problem is that with the sequence of returns you're going to get, that's not going to happen every single year.
Yeah, so let's look at a slide here. This is a history of bear markets, and this is a slide we use quite frequently. This goes back to 1946 and runs through 2017 and shows the last 13 bear markets. So I'm going to focus on the recent 30-year history here. So let's start in 1987. You can see from August of 87 to December of 87, the market dropped 34%. So it only took 4 months to find the bottom there. And then we had a recovery, of course, and you'll see each time the market did recover. But recently, we've had a 57% decline. It took a year and a half to go through that to find the bottom, but the market did recover. So the question is, should you design a plan that assumes you won't have any bear markets in the future? No, absolutely not. If you go back 30 years to 1987, let's say you retired in 1987, you would have gone through 1, 2, 3, 4 bear markets to get to where you are today. And so how you deal with those bear markets is very important. This shows basic asset class returns for the last almost 10 years. And we use this slide for various reasons. What I want to focus on today is the S&P 500. That's the U.S. market, America's largest 500 companies. In 2008, the S&P was down 37%. And then it was up 26, 15, 2, 16. I think you can follow along there. We haven't had a bear market since 2008, 2009. And if you go back to this slide, you'll see that on average we have these bear markets every 4 to 6 years. So to say we're due for a bear market experience is an understatement. We are absolutely due for one. Does that mean you should change your retirement plans? No, but you ought to approach retirement income maybe a bit differently than you might have in the past. Also, when we look at asset classes, there are places every single year that don't do very well. That's what's at the bottom of this chart. From small cap emerging market stocks down 58% to more recently U.S. government bonds not doing very well while the rest of the market does okay. You have to consider the performance in different aspects of all these asset classes when you build a retirement income strategy, and we certainly do. And so we've given you a lot of sort of what ifs and sort of worrisome problems that you have to deal with. So what is our solution?
Well, our solution is our process that we call Income in Stages Money to Last.
And so what Michael's going to go through now is how we structure a retirement from the beginning.
Right. So when we look at your retirement, we don't look at it just being one, big picture that we're going to say, okay, we're going to have a 60-40 portfolio allocation. What we do instead is break your retirement down into stages. And we have 6 stages building out a 30-plus year retirement picture. So as you can see, stage 1 is years 1 through 6 of retirement. Stage 2 is going to be years 7 through 12. Stage 3 is years 13 through 18. Stage 4, 19 through 24. Stage 5 is 25 through 30, and we have our legacy stage, which is built out for a 30-plus year picture. And the idea is that you need a different asset allocation for each stage of retirement based on your needs. So we'll be investing more conservatively in the earlier stages 1 and 2, and more aggressively in stages 3 through legacy. And we're going to get into the whys and wherefores of this here shortly.
So let's talk stage 1. The characteristics are, we do not know what the market's going to do over the next 6 years. If anybody says they do know, they're either delusional or they're lying to you. We do know one thing's for sure: it will be volatile, and we don't want your expenses, the things you need to do from today for the next 6 years, to be affected by that volatility. So assets are typically invested in 90 to 100% fixed income. So the money you need today, so you may have $1 million, but maybe $200,000 is what you need for the next 6 years. That's kept very conservatively invested. Typically what we call a 0-100 strategy. The reasoning, as I mentioned, we don't know what the market's going to do. In the event of a bear market or recession, which we're certainly due for one now, your immediate needs are better protected against those downturns. And it gives you time to ride out those bear markets. If we look back at that previous slide, in every instance, the market did recover and then kept on growing. It just took time to get through that. And so stages 2 through legacy, we call the growth stages, those are what really we use for inflationary measures and to help grow the portfolio to meet those other long-term needs. So stage 2 is typically invested in a 40% stock strategy. That is designed to cover years 7 through 12. And then years 13 through 18, that's stage 3, 60% stock. So yes, we've added more stock to the equation, but think of it this way. The money you invest in 60% stock is not needed for 13 years at the start of the plan. In stage 4, at 80% stock, money used years 19 through 24. 5, 100% stock, money used years 25 through 30. And legacy, again, 100% stock. And we'll go through what legacy is about here in just a moment, but that's 30 years beyond. So what happens after 6 years?
Right. So after 6 years, your stage 1 funds are going to be pretty close to depleted if we did our job right. So after 6 years, what we're going to do is rebalance your portfolio internally. Stage 2 is going to become your new income stage. And those assets are usually shifted from a 40%, if you recall, equity stance to a 90 to 100% fixed income stance, being the new income stage. The latter stages, being 3 through legacy, they're going to be shifted down the allocation structure. And remember, that overall portfolio asset allocation is going to be at or near 60-40, but we're going to take a look at what that allocation structure looks like. So here we go. Here's where we show years 1 through 6 of retirement. You can see that stage 1 is your income producing stage. 2 through legacy are going to be your assets and growth stages. So here we are, 6 years through retirement. This is where the first rebalancing happens. So here we are in year 7. Stage 2 is going to be the new income producing stage, with stages 3, 4, 5, and legacy being shifted down their allocation structure. If you notice, stage 3, 4, and 5 all shifted down 20%. So stage 3 is at 40, stage 4 60, stage 5 80. Legacy remained at 100, and we're going to explain why that is here in just a second. So here we are, years 13 through 18. Stage 3 is now the income producing stage. 4, 5, and legacy are the assets and growth stages. Years 19 through 24, stage 4 is now the income producing stage. Years 25 through 30, now stage 5 is the income producing stage. And then finally, 30 plus years into the future, we have our legacy.
And I mentioned earlier we discussed legacy in detail. So legacy, in some cases, folks come in here and they want to leave what they started with in their plan to their heirs. Whether it's children or a church or charity, and that's really almost rare actually that somebody wants to do. Most people say that last check better bounce at the funeral home if we can do it right, and that's really an individual case. What we really use legacy for is the what ifs. What if you live longer than you thought? Longevity protection. What if you need help with long-term care? Or if there's an unexpected financial emergency? Because legacy is not necessarily earmarked for income, it's a great place to dip if you have to for the unexpected. So we tried to address the 5 big risks, from market risk to inflation risk to life expectancy being extending beyond what most expect. Most don't expect to live 30 years in retirement, but people are. Providing for your family, and then the health care risk. So let's look at an example of John and Mary. They're a pretty typical client, and they're 65 years old. They've got about $1 million, and they expect to receive about $36,000 from Social Security. Their non-discretionary needs, these are the bills that have to be paid to maintain their lifestyle. $75,000 a year. Again, pretty typical. Discretionary needs, about $10,000 a year for 10 years. These are the initial what ifs. I go through this with clients when they first start retiring. That first 6 to 10 years is most likely the years you'll play the most. You might travel more, you might spend more time away from the home, and they tend to be a little bit more expensive. So that's why we have an additional $10,000 a year built in there for that first 10 years. Travel, $5,000 a year for 15 years, and these are, in this case, they want to leave $1 million to their children, what they started with. So we go through a preliminary planning process where we start with your current ages, the non-discretionary needs growing at 3.25% there, build in that Social Security income that's expected, throw in travel expenses, miscellaneous expenses here, and it drives this assets needed. We really like this because we know for a fact that on most people's mind when they come visit us is, do I have enough? Have I saved enough? Not everybody has gone through an accumulation retirement plan where they've sat down 20 years ago with an advisor and figured out what that number will be. Well, that's very important. I mean, if you're going to throw in your paperwork and you're going to retire, you need to know whether you can afford it. So that's the first question we answer is, can you afford it? And if you can't, we get to the drawing board and figure out ways to make some adjustments, whether it's saving more, working longer, spending less, using some other assets that you might have acquired. There's lots of levers to pull, and certainly we've got some experience in doing that. And then we go through the actual income analysis. So we see these fixed needs at $75,000 growing to about $115,000. You can see this is just inflation. I'd love to say they're getting pay raises, and they are, but in fact they're just able to buy the same stuff with those pay raises because of inflationary issues. There you see the additional needs brought in, and we offset that with any income available, whether it's pension or in this case Social Security, and that drives the portfolio income needed. So they need $90,000 in the first year, $56,000 in the second, $58,000, $60,000. You can see, so stage 1 right here, ultimately need about $65,000 from the portfolio in order to provide for their lifestyle in stage 1. This drives how the assets, or our recommendation for how these assets should be invested. So instead of that traditional 60-40, we'd recommend $298,000 in stage 1. Again, not a lot of growth here, but stability. We want to make sure they can meet those needs for the next 6 years. Stage 2, now we're at that 40% stock level, about $238,000. And so I'm going to list each stage here. You can see for stage 5 in legacy, we now are at 100% stock. So focus on this number here. That tells you how much stock is in that recommendation. This says how much we should initially invest. And so we've got 6 stages. What's really neat is our custodian allows us to do this within one IRA if needed, or one investment account, whether it's an IRA or after-tax investment account. We could do this with multiple accounts. Most people will have 3 or 4 different accounts when they retire. But we can do all this and structure this such that it's fairly simple for you, the client, to view, monitor, and pay attention to. Ultimately, we still are around this 60-40 asset allocation for John and Mary. And this breaks it down even a little bit different view. I want to highlight down here, we have a sample client that somebody can go in and look at what a plan structure might actually look like in real time. Go to our website and go under financial planning, and you'll see that how you access that sample client there. So Michael, explain our Monte Carlo, our stochastic modeling process.
Right. So one of the aspects of our wealth management software allows us to take our recommendations coupled with your assets, and we run them against a series of market scenarios. In this instance, what we like to do is run them against 1,000 different market scenarios. So that incorporates up markets, down markets, sideways markets, zigzag markets, you name it, and it spits out a probability of success. And what success is you being able to accomplish your goals. So what this means, an 84% probability of success, is that in those 1,000 different market scenarios, we succeeded in 840 of them given the information that we have right now.
And what life's going to do to people, you're very familiar with this, it's going to change. And so as lifestyles change, as plans change, we build in different techniques, planning techniques, whether it's purchasing new real estate, a change in living expenses, or any other expenses, and it drives a change in this probability of success. So if we get a phone call from a client and they say, you know what, and this is not that uncommon, you know, my son lives in North Carolina and he and his wife are expecting our first grandchild. We want to move to North Carolina. What is that going to do to our probability of succeeding? Can we model this? And the answer is absolutely. We go in and we build different techniques and we can answer that question fairly quickly and then adjust the plan and move forward. So thanks for your time and attention. I think Dick is going to step in now and close this presentation. We look forward to hearing from you. If you have any questions, just feel free to give us a call.
I'd like to thank Jeremy and Michael for discussing this retirement income process. It was developed to address certain market conditions like 2008 and 2009, where the market was down 57%. And prior to that, 2000, 2001, and 2002, where the market was down 9, 12, and 22%. If you have not prepared for the next market downturn, and it's 9 years into this bull market, you could end up losing a significant amount of your resources. So we hope you've enjoyed this presentation. We also hope that you'll take the time to explore our retirement income process. We'd like to invite you in to discuss this at some future date. Thanks for listening.